It is now very evident and very obvious from the overwhelming research for more than 30 years. And this is all from NASA's press releases, from NASA's, well, mostly their press releases, that we get all this information, that water is everywhere in the universe. It's everywhere you look. Now, I know that if this is new to you, you're probably going to say, what do you mean everywhere? The more you research this, the more you realize how incredibly uninformed we are about what space is and what's really going on out there. So over the next few slides, I'm going to show you why we can make such a statement and how we can reach such a conclusion that water is everywhere in the universe. And these are just a bunch of NASA's articles. This is Ocean Worlds, Water in the Solar System and Beyond. So they're telling us two very important things, that there's water in the solar system, and there's a lot of water in the solar system, and that there's water beyond our solar system, okay? Story of oceans is a story of life. Oceans define our home planet, covering the majority of Earth's surface and driving the water cycle that dominates our land and atmosphere. But more profound still is the story of our oceans, the oceans that envelops our home in a far greater context that reaches deep into the universe and places us in a rich family of ocean worlds that span our solar system and beyond. Ocean worlds that span our solar system and beyond. And then we read, our solar system and beyond is awash in water. And the more you look at this, the more profound and obvious it becomes. And it's just going to intensify as we go through these. And these are just some of the press releases over the last 30 years from NASA, literally going back to the 80s and the 90s. It's more like 40 years actually, or very much about 30 years at this stage. So NASA detects sprawling cloud of cold water vapor around a burgeoning solar system of a nearby star, which they called TW Hydra. Very interesting name, that TW Hydra. Hydra obviously stands for water. Water from Orion. Now this is, again, very important. You know, everybody knows about Orion that studies ancient civilizations, because Orion and Orion's belt and Osiris and Horus, it's all connected with Orion. The last thing we think about is when we look up at Orion's belt and the Orion star system, we think about water and that whole part of the region being filled with water. But here you go, water molecules exist in the Orion Nebula and are still forming today. The nebula is composed mostly of hydrogen gas. Other molecules are comparatively rare. Even so, the nebula is so vast that it creates enough water every day to fill Earth's oceans 60 times over. Listen to this. Just listen to that. So nebula, the Orion Nebula creates 60 times the amount of water that we find in all of our oceans on Earth. Now, how they know that, you're going to ask yourself. That's a big question. This is some calculation that they did based on some interesting observations that they make. So they make this calculation and they put this out as publicity. But it's important because they're telling us what's going on out there. There is water everywhere, and water being created on a daily basis, minute by minute, second by second basis. Amounts of water that we can't imagine are being created in space all the time. Black hole hosts universe's most massive water cloud. Galaxy 12 billion light years away. And notice that the dates of some of these press releases, this goes back to 2011. Okay, some of them are more recent and some of them go back to the 1989s, 1990s, and so forth. So in a galaxy 12 billion light years away resides the most distant and most massive cloud of water yet seen in the universe, astronomers say. Weighing in at 40 billion times the mass of Earth, the giant cloud of mist swaddles a type of actively feeding supermassive black hole known as a quasar. So once again, they're telling us there's water everywhere, whether it's in the form of black holes. By now, you should know that a black hole is nothing more or less than just a giant toroidal field. It's a place of creation, not a place of destruction. And these are, again, part of well, it both creates and reprocesses the energy, as all torus fields do, toroidal fields do. In last month's presentation, I showed how the torus fields, even our beautiful little torus stones in the museum, how they generate energy, how they suck the ambient sound from within the area, and how they amplify it through the 0 point, through the vortex, the 0 point of that torus stone, and how they push it out to the other side in an amplified way. So they're generating energy, they're amplifying energy. And here we have black holes, with 40 billion times the size of Earth, generating huge amounts of energy. Black hole hosts universe's most massive water cloud. This is the image that they posted with that previous press release and that previous article. And you realize that they are telling us, they're constantly feeding us the information. It's like Hollywood, hiding it in plain sight. NASA is doing exactly the same thing. They're hiding the truth, and they're hiding the knowledge and the true science in plain sight. It's just, we need to wake up and start to realize what they're showing us. Here's a fascinating one from 2017. This Herschel Observatory that they put up into space, this Herschel Space Observatory, during almost 4 years of observing the cosmos, the Herschel Space Observatory traced out the presence of water. With its unprecedented sensitivity and spectral resolution at key wavelengths, Herschel revealed this crucial molecule in star-forming molecular clouds. Now, pay attention to the words here. Star-forming molecular clouds. It's detected it for the first time in the seeds of future stars and planets, and identified the delivery of water from interplanetary debris to planets in our solar system. This is such an important little paragraph that they're telling us so much about water in the star formation, water in planetary formation, and that already should allow us to jump to conclusions. If water is present in star and solar formations and prototype solar disk formations, because that's really what they're telling us, that means that stars, which includes our sun, must be made of water and must have water, right? Now, that's very obvious. This is an immediate conclusion that we have to reach. And then the first question is, well, how is it possible for stars or our sun to have water? And we're getting there. We're getting there. This is the big thing. This is the big reveal, people, the big discovery and the big reveal that they're keeping secret from us. They don't want to tell us what's really going on in space, because none of us have been to space. We don't really have access to the powerful observatories and the telescopes. We are shown what they want to show us. The little puny private telescopes that people have are just simply not powerful enough to see what's really going on out there. We have very bad, blurry images of what's going on out there, but nothing the way that we should be seeing things. Here's another one. Now suddenly, even asteroids, we were already told that comets are made of ice and water and ice, and as comets fly through space, they leave their debris behind, which is ice and water. So they're telling us that that's ice, but ice is water, right? It's just in a different state. So obviously the comets picked up the water somewhere and are either in ice, or they might be in another form of state of water, which we're not really going to cover here. But please understand that water can have various different states. H2O is just one of the states of water. H2O3 is another. H3O2, sorry, is another one. H3O2 is another state of water, and the fourth phase of water, as it's often called, and so forth. So water is becoming and is already, to anyone that researches the origins of life, origins of creation, the mysteries of life, biomimicry, science, chemistry, chemical reactions, and so forth. Anyone that studies that, and I wish they taught us this at university. I spent 4 years studying medicine or pharmaceutics at medical school in Wits University, and then the 5th year is your practical year, where you work in practical field. either in pharmaceutical manufacturing or anything to do with pharmaceutics. So it's a 5-year degree. So in 4 years of studying, inorganic chemistry and organic chemistry and so forth, not once do they actually explain to you, and you have to figure this out for yourself, the importance of hydrogen and oxygen in all of these reactions. And the reason I'm telling this to you, because it's hydrogen and oxygen that makes up water. And we're talking about water in space, and water and hydrogen and oxygen as the key central elements in pretty much every imaginable chemical reaction. So when we talk about water in space, it's not just, this interesting new thing, weird thing that is water in space. It actually points back to the importance of water, the sacredness of water, because life without water is impossible. Keep remembering that 90% of our body is made up of water. Pretty much every cell in your body, not pretty much, every cell in your body is filled with water, has got water in it. And then the stuff around it, the blood and so forth. So we pretty much made up of water. And now cosmos is full of water. And it starts to become very clear what's going on here, how they are hiding the importance of water. They certainly don't teach us anything about water at school or at university. The importance of H2O, or hydrogen and oxygen, in all of creation, in all of chemistry and chemical reactions. And this is a big aha moment. I know when this hit me several years ago, it is almost as if I had this flash of like the masterstroke, that now I could start to begin to explain everything, whether it's from a cosmic perspective, the structure of the toroidal magnetic fields, but how do you explain what happens after that initial structure of the toroidal magnetic fields? What happens after that? What happens to the nitty-gritty, the matter that comes out of that, the water, the matter, the hydrogen, the helium, etc., the oxygen, the silica. And keep in mind, the two most abundant elements on Earth, or materials on Earth, is water and sand, or quartz. Water, H2O, and quartz, which is silica dioxide. So oxygen is the common denominator. One binds with hydrogen, the other one binds with silica. And between those two, we have all the water in all the oceans. And on the other side, we have all the materials in all the rock formations on Earth. This is a huge, huge thing to contemplate that so few people think about, and how important it is in us discovering that there's water everywhere in space. So now suddenly there's water on an asteroid, and this is important because in the most recent, this is already, this goes back to, this is 2018, so it's more recent, but the very recent, there are other recent discoveries that actually tell us how space dust also has water. I'm going to get to that. So this is very important. This is like the beginning of this trail of information that they're giving us. They're like breadcrumbs that they're throwing out to humanity to allow us to figure out. And like I said, like NASA, like Hollywood hides the information in plain sight, NASA is doing exactly the same thing. They have to put it out there. They have to feed us the information, because from a higher perspective of consciousness, they can, whoever these guys are answerable to, that remains a big question, obviously. They can say, well, we're telling them, we're giving them all this information, but they're just too stupid to figure it out. They don't understand what we're telling them. That's how I see it at the moment. It's like they're just feeding us this information and we're not digesting it. So I'm helping you digest this. I'm helping myself to digest this by studying this and just keeping my mind and my eyes open to what it is that we're actually being told. So suddenly asteroids are full of water as well. Now, if one asteroid has water, that means if all asteroids have water. In fact, I don't want to jump the gun. When you know how much water is actually present in these bodies, it's going to shock you beyond anything you've ever been shocked by. Well, actually, I might as well just tell you. The conclusions are, because we're going to get there later. I don't even know if we're going to get there today. But the latest conclusions and discoveries that have been put out there is that space dust and space rock and asteroids contain up to 20 liters of water per cubic meter of rock. Just put that into context. A cubic meter of rock isn't very big. It's a meter. It's like one arm length and arm length and arm length down. That's a cubic meter of rock, space rock. They're telling us that there's 20 liters of water. 20 liters of water is a lot of water in that cubic meter of space rock. That's a game changer. A game changer. We certainly don't seem to have 20 cubic meters of water in rock on Earth. That doesn't happen. Go and chop out, think about the giant blocks that make up the pyramid. There's no water in there. And yet space rock has now suddenly got 20 liters of water per cubic meter. What's going on here? Why are they telling us this? All right, so this is deep stuff here, people, very deep stuff. And then we get beautiful headlines like this. I'm going to come back to this one a little bit later again, because it's actually part of a much bigger article. But I extracted this out of this article a long time ago, purely because what I find is what they do when they put out these press releases is they give it a lovely little flowery headline. The heading, Stellar Sprinkler Nourishes Galactic Garden. Right now, come on, do me a favor. Stellar Sprinkler Nourishes Galactic Garden. People that are not interested in this stuff, and they don't realize the deep consequence of what we're dealing with here, of water everywhere in space and water in space rocks and so forth. The people that don't appreciate the importance and the consequence will read this headline and they'll see it as a soap opera, okay? Because they've just finished watching a soap opera or watching a little fairy tale movie or some sci-fi movie, and they read this, they go, Stellar Sprinkler Nourishes Galactic Garden. Wow, that's cool, man. Wow, I could just imagine this gigantic stellar sprinkler, spewing out water into the galaxy, and there's a beautiful garden somewhere. I don't know what people think when they read it, but clearly they use these very flowery and creative, poetic headlines to take us off our track and let us get lost in what the real subject matter is about. So let me read this to you so you can digest this, the significance and importance of this. So what's really exciting about the discovery is that it appears to be a stellar rite of passage, a stellar rite of passage. So this happens to all stars. That's what it means, the researcher says, which may shed a new light on the earliest stages of our own sun's life and how water fits into this picture. What they're telling us, again, let me explain this to you if you don't understand that statement. They're telling us that stars are formed out of water, or at least water is part of the original molecular substance that makes up water. We are only now beginning to understand that sun-like stars probably all undergo a very energetic phase when they are young. This is one of the scientists in this, Christensen. I think he's with a Dutch research institute. It's at this point in their lives when they spew out a lot of high velocity material, part of which we now know is water. So if stars spew out water, that means somewhere, somehow, they must be either creating water or they must be absorbing it from the nothingness around them. Otherwise, how can they spew out water? Just pay attention to this, okay? Stars are suddenly formed from collapsing dust. Now, this is how they describe it to us, that the space dust collapses under its own gravity. If you go read, that's always what they say. It collapses under its own gravity. And we could probably just talk about that statement for another 2 hours alone, how space dust can collapse under its own gravity. What does that mean? What does it actually even mean? And they just put it out there. And the reason they put it out there, because most people don't realize how significant statements like that are. They're telling us, they're giving us the information on a platter. If space dust can collapse under, and see how, now I've already down another rabbit hole, right? See, I'm trying to read this to you, and I'm not down another bloody rabbit hole, because that's how exciting all this stuff is. So let me stop talking about space dust collapsing and come back to this. So this is basically what they're telling us now, that all stars are made up of water. They start out by being water or generating water or creating water or sucking water in from somewhere around them. and then spewing the water out at very high velocity. So it's like a celestial sprinkle system. The star may be enriched. The star may be enriching the interstellar medium, thin gases that float in the voids between stars, and so forth. And because the hydrogen and oxygen and water are key components of the dusty disk in which the star forms, there's another clue here, that stars are formed out of dusty disks in which the star forms. Such protostar sprinklers may be encouraging the growth of further stars somewhere else. So we seem to have a knock-on effect here. And the more water you have, the more stars you can create. That's what this really tells us. Let's carry on. And now this is from very recent. This is from October 2020, just not even 2 years ago. NASA's SOFIA discovers water on the sunlit surface of the moon. Now, you know, for years we're told that there's no water on the moon and so forth. And yet there were obviously, if anyone of you that has done research into this will have known about the, you know, massive clouds of water vapor that were apparently detected by the astronauts when they were on the moon. Now, again, I say apparently because, you know, many people don't believe that we ever went to the moon and so forth. So how that disinformation and those lies fit together is a spectacular story. And you start seeing how this disinformation and the lies and the pieces of the giant puzzle of lies start to fit together, and how they very carefully have to make sure that they don't lie about this because they're going to get caught out over here. But every now and then it catches up with them and their lies get exposed very, very blatantly and quite obviously to people. And we're going to come to one of those big lies about the moon very, very soon. So suddenly there's water on the moon. We were told that there were vast clouds of water vapor on the moon years and years ago. And that story disappeared, and many people didn't believe it. And now there's official stories, not even 2 years ago, they found water in this crater here, whatever that crater is called. This is what it says. So this is a quick, you know, again, keep in mind that NASA has some of the world's greatest science fiction graphic designers and CGI designers. They've got the best in the world, because that's all we see. Every time we see anything from space, whether it's a comet or an asteroid, or you know, whatever, or exploding stars, they never show us the raw footage. We always see an artist's impression of the activity. So we never really see what's going on. I'm going to share some raw footage with you, which paints a very different kind of idea of what's really going on. So this is what it says. NASA's Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, SOFIA, has confirmed for the first time water on the sunlit surface of the moon. Now, it's important, this is on the sunlit surface of the moon. This discovery indicates that water may be distributed across the lunar surface and not limited to cold, shadowed places. I guess they want to tell us that if sun shines on the water, it's going to evaporate. But if it's cold and shady, the water isn't going to evaporate. That's what they're trying to tell us, right? SOFIA has detected that water molecules, H2O, in Clavius crater, that's the big crater, is visible from Earth, located on the moon's southern hemisphere. Previous observations of the moon's surface detected some form of hydrogen, but were unable to distinguish between water and its close chemical relative, hydroxyl, and that's a very important thing here. This hydroxyl, or OH molecule, which is OH plus, actually, it's a positive molecule, positively charged molecule. And data from this location reveal water in concentrations of about 100 to 412 parts per million, roughly equivalent to about 12-ounce bottles of water trapped in a cubic meter of soil spread across the lunar surface. Now, once again, 12 ounces to a 12-ounce bottle of water trapped in a cubic meter of soil spread across the lunar surface. Now, I'm not sure if they're telling us it's per cubic meter or if it's just 1 cubic meter of soil spread right across the lunar surface. That is not clear here in this article, which is very different from what I told you about the amount of water in the rock. So we had indications that H2O, water, the familiar water we know, might be present on the sunlit side of the moon, said Paul Hertz, director of astrophysics, blah, 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 in Washington. Now we know it is there. This discovery challenges our understanding of the lunar surface and raises intriguing questions about resources relevant for deep space exploration. Let's move on. You start seeing the hidden messages and what they're trying to share with us and what they're trying to hide from us. Scientists have found more water in space than they ever knew possible. This is from another one. So I didn't credit the different magazines and publications this comes from, but it comes from all the most famous popular scientific publications, physics.org or Physics Daily, Scientific American, National Geographic, Nature, etc., etc. We've known for a long time that there is water in space. Yeah, but now this is from January 2021. Okay, this is a year ago. This is a year ago. And now suddenly they tell us arrogantly that we've known for a long time that there's water in space. Well, most people don't know this. You haven't told the world that there's water in space. You've been hiding it in very subliminal messages through your BS press releases that you put out, right? So now suddenly we've known for a long time that there's water in space, but an international team of scientists has found a cloud of water vapor 12 billion years away, and it's bigger than you could possibly imagine. You will not believe how much water has been found floating around in space. This is the kind of stuff they're telling us now. You see what they're trying to get across. And these are just some key points that were published. This is, again, this is a screenshot from these articles. So I'm not writing it. You can actually see the screenshot. And you start to realize that Earth itself, not just stars are formed out of water and from water, but Earth itself is actually most likely formed from water. It says that water is abundant in space. It was thought that Earth was dry when it formed. New study shows that meteorite rocks of the type that built the Earth contains the building blocks of water. This means that water formed on Earth from day one, rather than being a later addition. And there's a lot more to this story about how Earth was formed and that water is very important to that forming. This is a very important article in National Geographic. This goes back already to 2011. A star found shooting water bullets. In fact, that article that I read to you previously actually comes from this article about how much water is in space and so forth. But let's carry on. So this is a dramatic article because and again, you see how they choose the headline. It's like a headline, fairy tale to expand your mind. Star found shooting water bullets, and people go, wow, stars are shooting water bullets, like stellar sprinkler nourishes galactic garden, that kind of thing. And we get lost in the soap opera and the science fiction fairy tale rather than thinking about what does it truly mean. But if a star is shooting a water bullet, you're in big trouble. Okay, and I'll read to you what that means a little bit later. And this is another very important bit of thing that they tell us, is that all stars have water. Read between the lines here, people. Between the lines here, they tell us, and this is a long, long time ago already. This also goes back to like the 1990s, I think, this article. Of the 30 embryonic star systems observed with the Spitzer, only this particular star showed signs of water vapor. Now remember, water vapor and water is the same thing, okay? It's water, H2O. According to Watson, this is most likely because the protostar's axis points almost directly at the Earth, that star they studied. The other 29 stars could very well have just as much water emission as this star, but they are turned the wrong way and you can't see them. So they've already concluded the other ones will have water, but they just, fudging the information here. But it's very obvious now. That's an old article where they were still not telling us directly that stars have water. In some of the previous ones that I read, it's now very clear that they tell us that stars are formed from and out of water, together with some other so-called space dust, like crystals, silica dioxide, and other potential material that at this stage is a little suspicious. But the water and the silica dioxide crystals together is definitely seems to be the foundational molecular or elements that make up stars and planets. So water in space continues to feed back into the black hole. This is a big one, very big one. The gas clouds, higher temperature compared to other water in space is accounted for by the X-rays and radiation emitted from the black hole. These two things ensure that the water in space is constantly heated. Pay attention to that. Water in space is constantly heated. The black hole feeds off the surrounding clouds of water in space and carbon monoxide, among other elements. And scientists estimate that if the water is a sphere in space, there's enough matter surrounding the hole to feed it until it grows to 6 times its current size. So they tell you how the water feeds itself. So they tell us somehow that the water is getting more and more abundant. It seems to grow. I want to move on to some of the other articles. This one is a little fuzzy. Water on the sun. And now we get to the real studies from 1995 already, when they started to tell us that there's water on the sun. We've already read some of the more recent articles that tell us that the sun is made of water and originally comes out of water and probably silica dioxide or quartz crystals. And now in 1995, they already start telling us that there's water on the sun, not in liquid form because the sun is too hot. Notice how they remind us that the sun is too hot, so there can't be water, but it's vapor or steam. So it's water vapor on the sun. And here you can see this has got big BS written on it as big as you can possibly read. So just please understand how they're telling us between the lines what's going on here, right? We're going to come back here. This is such a fascinating subject because the lines here between what the lies are and what's really going on and what space really is are so blurred and they're so distorted that it makes it difficult and yet at the same time very exciting. So another article here, water on the sun, molecules everywhere. It's from 1997. This is the actual headline in the Science magazine. And this is how they presented it to us. And when you go to NASA's main website and you search for water on the sun, this is what comes up. This is the question. So somebody posed a question there. Does the sun have any water? And this is NASA's official answer underneath that whoever runs that website answers. As strange as it seems, yes, water has been detected on the sun. Actually, what was detected is steam over a particularly cool sunspot, where the temperatures were only about 1,000 Kelvin, so on. Because we know that the sun is very, very hot, so it can't really have water. So it can only have water vapor. And then further back to, when was this? 1997 as well, Waterloo University confirms that water exists on the sun. I love this one because you can imagine Waterloo University obviously has far more credibility because of their name as Waterloo to tell us that there's water on the sun. So it's a very important one, but I'm going to speed up here a little bit because we've been at this for an hour already, I believe. Geez. So, and then we get to these interesting articles like from 2014, Earth's water is older than the sun. And you start asking, well, how's that possible? How can Earth's water be older than the sun? Wasn't the sun formed first? And then the planets were formed after the star was formed? From the leftover dust, all the planets formed. That's what we are told all these years. That's what I studied when I studied astronomy and all the formations of planets. All that, well, that doesn't seem to be the case. If Earth's water is older than the sun, then something else is going on here. And then they try to explain to us how the Earth's water can be older than the sun. And by explaining to us, they tell us that there's water in space. So as much as half of the water of Earth's oceans could be older than the sun, the study has found by reconstructing conditions in the disk of gas and dust in which the solar system formed. Once again, we get that disk of gas and dust. And keep in mind now that that dust is filled with water. And the gas is hydrogen and oxygen, so it makes water. Solar system formed, scientists have concluded that the Earth and other planets must have inherited much of their water from the cloud of gas from which the sun was born 4.6 billion years ago, instead of forming later. the authors say that such interstellar water would also be included in the formation of most other stellar systems. So they're telling us that stellar systems, stars, are formed from water, and perhaps of other Earth-like planets. So the dense interstellar clouds of gas and the dust where stars form contain abundant water. Once again, they tell us the interstellar clouds that stars are formed in contain abundance of water. And then they tell us in the form of ice. And when a star first lights up, it heats up the cloud around it and floods it with radiation, vaporizing the ice, breaking some of the water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. This is how they explain how Earth's water is older than the sun. But then they tell us that much of the Earth's water comes from elsewhere, and the interstellar ice water survived and then somehow got to Earth, and so it goes. So let's carry on, because this is getting a little bit boring. I think you're getting the story. And then there's a lovely article that tells us the famous Eye of God Nebula is weeping tears of water. Now, when I saw this article and this headline, that just blew my mind, because first of all, this is another artist's impression of the Eye of God Nebula. Now, remember, nebulas are birthplace of stars. That's where stars are formed and stars are born in nebulae. And so suddenly that you can very clearly see that Eye of God Nebula is very, very much a torus, very, very obviously a torus in a gigantic toroidal field. And right, just to show you a comparison here, so the image on the right is actually an image through a ferrocell lens of a real magnet and a real torus that shows us the energetic field around that magnet, that perfect magnetic toroidal field, energetic toroidal field that's created by magnets and magnetic fields. So just keep in mind, when we talk about stars, about solar systems, about galaxies, and now about nebulae, we're talking about toroidal fields, toroidal vortexes, torsion fields, and so on and so on. And those torsion fields have accretion disks. Those accretion disks that happen at the center of the torus and the perfectly balanced magnetic toroidal field. Those are these accretion disks where all the matter is concentrated. And this is why when stars when stars are born and stars are created and planets are born, come out of these accretion disks, not out of a ball, of dust or water, out of an accretion disk. And out of that accretion disk, they spew water this way and water and matter the other way. So it's exactly the same structure as we have in toroidal fields, pushing energy out the top and out the bottom, and swirling and creating the torsion fields in opposing directions. So you start realizing how everything we're going through here is just pointing towards water being the source of everything in the universe, including stars, including our sun. And this is why there's water. And I just want to remind you that our eyes are little small toruses. And this is just onto a whole nother subject that we're going to cover later. But you just need to see the interconnectedness of all of this. And the fact that frequencies of light and sound go through our eyes, through the lens at the center, and they land on the back of the eye, which is the retina, which is like a giant satellite dish. And inside the retina is what? We have rods and cones. Cones, remember we spoke about the cone-shaped tools that focus sound and focus energy into a Caesar beam. So now suddenly you start to realize how important the little toruses in our eyes in the form of irises are, and what important role they play to constrict and control and manipulate the light that goes into our eyes and then hit the satellite dishes, the retinas, and the sound frequencies and the light frequencies, the electromagnetic frequencies and the vibrational frequencies go into the cones that then create Caesar beams and Caesar impulses, I guess, and that goes into the optic nerve, and that ends up in your pineal gland. So now you start to realize how important all of this is and how the interconnectedness of all of this. That's why I threw this in here just completely out of context. But our eyes are very important windows to the soul and windows to the seat of the soul, which is obviously often referred to the pineal gland as the seat of the soul. So let's carry on with this crazy stuff out there in space. So basically by now we should recognize that all stars have water, and stars seem to be made up of water. And this is why, is it possible that when they show us this deep space image of the darkest part of the universe, and that's the image on the left, when they show us this, is it actually because we are looking into an infinite body of water? And the picture on the right is just a picture of a swimming pool with all the light and the frequencies in the light reflecting off the surface of the pool and the lower levels. So it's quite layered there as well. This is just spectacular. I think we have something very, very important here. This is not just something to be ignored. So, and here they tell us, all the way back in 2011 already, that stars seed the universe with water. 750 light years from Earth, a young sun-like star has been found, with jets that blast epic quantities of water into stellar space, shooting out droplets that move faster than a speeding bullet. This discovery suggests that protostars may be seeding the universe with water. These stellar embryos shoot jets of material from their north and south poles as their growth is fed by infalling dust that circles the bodies in a vast disk. Once again, pay attention to what they're describing here. They're describing the perfect balanced toroidal fields, the accretion disk at the center, the moving energies in opposing direction, spewing energy out the top and spewing energy out the bottom to the center of the toroidal field, like we found to the center of the donut-shaped stones or the torus stones. And we've seen images like that over and over and over again. In fact, the opening image of this where we were in 157. Let me just remind you what this talks about. It talks about this image here. Okay, so this is the kind of image they're referring to. The stellar disk and the spewing of energy and water and probably quartz and sand out of the top. Let's go back 157. Where are we? And then it carries on. Could stars and nebulae be the source of water in the universe? Again, they tell us that water is being produced by stars and they're shooting. I'm just going to jump to, actually, no, let's read this whole thing. So located in the northern constellation of Perseus, the protostar is no more than 100,000 years old and remains swaddled in a large cloud, gas and dust. So that seems to be around it, right? From which the star is being born. That sort of contradicts some of the previous statements, but let's carry on. Using an infrared instrument on the European Space Agency's Herschel Space Observatory, researchers were able to peer through the cloud and detect telltale light signatures of hydrogen and oxygen atoms, the building blocks of water, moving on and around the star. Okay, so let's carry on. After tracing the paths of these atoms, the team concluded that water forms on the star where temperatures are a few thousand degrees Celsius. But once the droplets enter the outward spewing jets of gas, temperatures, 100,000 degrees Celsius temperatures, they blast the water back into the gaseous form. So the water breaks up into hydrogen and oxygen, it gets spewed out, and then when it cools down, it forms water again. And once the hot gases hit as much cooler surrounding materials, about 5,000 times the distance from the Earth's sun to Earth, they decelerate, creating a shock front where the gases cool down rapidly, condense, and then form water. So they try to explain to us how this is possible with sort of mainstream Newtonian physics. And I think this is where the problem is, that you can't try and explain this with mainstream Newtonian physics, studying it, looking at it from our perspective, because it just doesn't make any sense.